What's up, guys? Let's talk Lua. Okay, so in the previous lessons, we've been talking about the if statement or conditional statements. Now, there are some additional functions or steps that can be taken in a conditional statement, those being else and else if. So we're going to touch on those today. Briefly, I'm going to demonstrate what we have been doing so far with the if statements. I have a new Notepad++ open, and I'm going to, because I want the coloring and features that come along with a .lua file, I'm going to go ahead and save this file as a .lua. So I'm going to go to my desktop. I'm going to go to Lua code, and then let's see, if.lua. I'm just going to call it something that sounds good. All right, so now the Notepad++ knows how to interpret the file, and when we say if, it gives me purple. Now, I have, just so y'all know, I am in the Dracula theme, and so I'm going to try to share that with y'all. If I haven't already, then watch that material posted on the high school, the classroom. All right, so if, and then we have some sort of conditional statement, then, and then end. So that is the if statement in a nutshell, okay? So this is the bare bones, the framework, if you will. The computer, on this line, it says, I am going to make a decision. It's like a fork in the road, right? If this conditional statement is true, now I haven't written anything in there yet, right? But it's just kind of just threw that in there as a placeholder. If this is true, then do this in here. I'll just make it. So if this is true, then do this in here. And then end. If it is not true, so far, it just skips this entire if statement. So if this conditional statement is not true, it just jumps down to here and continues on. So let's do this one real quick. Let's just say if, keep it simple, equals, don't forget that double, not hyphen, equal sign. If a equals 8, why not? Then, let's see, then let's just say print a. And else print false. Don't forget your parentheses. Don't forget your parentheses. Don't forget your quotation marks. Now, of course, we haven't defined a yet, so I'm going to do a equals what? IO. That sounds good. IO read, and it's going to take an input from the user. Now, I probably should ask the user for some sort of input. So in this case, please enter a value. Where's the V? For, whoops, that's jumbled. For A. And then colon. That sounds good. Save it. Now, let's run this real quick. Here I am in the folder that I want to run my code, or that my code is in. And to pull up a command prompt in that folder, something that we discovered in previous classes, is that all you have to do is navigate to the folder that you want to that has your code, and then select this this destination, this file path bar, and type. If you just click in there, it highlights everything. And then if you type cmd, it opens up a command prompt in that folder. Very nice. So now we're going to say if.lua please enter a value for A. And I'm going to press 3. And then it says false. So very, very confusing for somebody who doesn't know what's going on. 8, why not? That's right, we didn't do any coercion. So you notice that it should have said true here because I entered an 8. And at this point, you might have the thought, the computer is just messing up. It doesn't work. This makes a lot of sense. Why isn't it working? Well, you got to understand that the computer is expecting a specific input and it's a specific instruction in order to work. So it is actually functioning completely as it is supposed to. It is us humans that have expectations that are not being met and that cannot be met by the program. So let's read this real quick. So we've got this right. So please enter a value for a. We entered an 8. If a equals 8, then do this. Well, why isn't it working? It's because when IO read grabs an input from the user, right? It grabs an input and it assigns it to a. It has to choose some sort of variable type because, you know, if we said a equals 8, then the Lua language understands that a is a number. Now, what if we said a equals 8? Well, in that case, the computer understands 8 to be text and not an actual number. And that is, this case right here, is exactly what happens when io.read is run. It has to accept every single input as text. If it didn't, I mean, you might, I don't know, it could possibly decipher between the two, but as is, every single input that you give io.read is interpreted as text and therefore must be changed into a number if it is a number at all. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to do coercion, which is a equals a plus 0. You're thinking like, wait, well, how does what's going on? Well, how can you do addition to something that you're assigning? Bear with me. The a is, this side of the equation is interpreted before this one. And so what happens is when you do this, it changes a and then it comes back, and then the next step is to assign it to a. And so in the process of doing this, in the process of adding 0 to text, it actually does a test. It says, could a be a number? And it finds out, oh yes, it could be a number. And I'm going to go ahead and add 0 to it, which doesn't change it at all. And so you end up with a then being a number. So let's save this and see if that is true. If.lua 8, and it says false. Oh, but of course. But you'll notice here that it actually added an 8 in there. And when we look at our script, if a equals 8, then print a. And great, it does that. But then it comes down here and it prints false. It just regardless of whether the if statement is skipped or if it is run. So how do we change this? How do we make it so that it'll only print false if it is actually false? Well, there's something called else, and in this case, it comes after the first section, which I'm going to say if true, run this, and then I'm going to come down here and say if false. Okay, right? So if true, if false. Now don't forget that we need to enter an end to complete our if statement. Okay, so here we have something different. Now it has an else is sandwiched right in between the if and the end, right? So we've added something in between there. This kind of makes sense, right? So if a equals 8, then run this, or else run this. And so instead of printing a, I think I actually want to print true. We're going to do a save. We're going to run over here and see if this works. If.lua, do an a and true. It just says true. So enter a number for a, 6, false. So that is basically, that's the else functionality, and it can be used. It's basically like if we were to write it out like a fork in the road, right? So here's our if. Here's your if, and then your conditional statement. It says if it's true, then we're gonna go this way. Whoops. Okay, true, whatever. And then this is false. And so in this case, we've got in the true case, we have some script that is run and and it does something. And then as well, now we can actually assign some code to this path that is only run if this condition is false. All right, so that is the else. Now I want to explain to you if else, and it's quite simple. In order to use the if else, which is not correct, it's Elseif. All you have to do is you write else if, and then you write some conditions. So a equals 5, and then do this, or you could say a equals 8, and then right here we say a equals 5. All right, so let's save that, and then we're going to run over to our command prompt and run this. So here we have a. Please enter a value for a. So 4. It doesn't do anything because it doesn't satisfy either of those conditions, a being 8 or a being 5. Now, if we run it again and we plug it in 8, it says a equals 8. And then if we run it again and say 5, a equals 5. So this right here is very powerful because you are able to then add several of these else ifs. So you could test for many different conditions. You could say if else if a is great or less than 5, and then if it's greater than 5 and whatnot. You know, this is a very you might be able to use this in coding at some point. But as far as these actual conditions, but at any rate, so that's else if. And just to recap real quick, here first line we say please enter a. This one we read an input. This one we make the input a number. Line 4 tests to see if the input a is equal to 8. If it is, then it runs this. If it is not, it goes to the next else if, and it tests to see if a equals 5. If it is, then it runs this, and so this comment is actually not correct. If it is not, it goes to the next else if, tests this condition, and runs it. And then finally, if that is not correct, it does this. Now, if at any point one of these conditions is satisfied or is true, then it will jump all the way to the bottom and go to line 18 in this case and continue on. So guys, that's briefly if statements. Else if. I need to get off because this has been a long enough recording. Let me know if you have any questions and I will answer them as soon as I can, or as quickly as I can.